Quezon City never really sleeps. Even at night, jeepneys groan through the streets, vendors shout over one another, and neon lights flicker like tired eyes that refuse to close. In one narrow alley near a busy intersection, there lived a girl named Maria Santos. She was small for her age, thin as if the city itself had slowly eaten pieces of her childhood. Her slippers were worn down at the heels, her dress faded from too many washes in cold water, and her hair was always tied back with the same old ribbon she had owned since she was 9. Maria was poor, but poverty was not the heaviest thing she carried. Fear was. Maria lived with her uncle Rogelio in a cramped, leaking room above a closed-down Sorry store. Her parents had died years earlier in a ferry accident she barely remembered, leaving her with fragments of warmth and a voice that reminded her of her mother's lullabies. Her uncle was not a cruel man by nature, but poverty and bitterness had hardened him. When he lost his job as a construction worker, the drinking began. When the drinking began, the shouting followed. And when the shouting no longer paid the bills, Rogelio found another use for Maria's voice. At first, it was simple. Sing on the street, he said. Sing near the mall, near the jeepney stop, where people are generous. She was terrified, but she obeyed. Her voice was soft, shy, trembling like a leaf in the wind. But people noticed. Some stopped, some smiled, some dropped coins into the plastic cup she held with shaking hands. Rogelio saw this and his eyes changed. What started as a way to survive slowly became a demand. If the coins were not enough, the shouting grew louder at home. If Maria refused to sing, the door was locked behind her and she was told not to come back without money. The night everything changed was heavy with rain. Dark clouds hung low over Quezon City, and the streetlights reflected off puddles like broken mirrors. Maria stood near a pedestrian crossing, soaked and exhausted. Her throat hurt, her stomach was empty. She had already been singing for hours, her voice cracking, her hands numb. People rushed past her, umbrellas up, eyes down. She wanted to stop, she wanted to disappear. A group of teenagers laughed as they passed her, one of them mocking her singing. A man in a hurry bumped her shoulder and didn't look back. A security guard waved her away from the sidewalk, telling her she was blocking the path. Maria's eyes filled with tears, but she swallowed them back. Crying didn't earn coins. Singing did. Then she saw her uncle standing across the street under the awning of a closed shop. His arms were crossed. He was watching her, waiting. The message was clear. Sing. Her chest tightened. She closed her eyes and began again. She chose a song her mother used to hum while washing clothes late at night. It was an old, gentle melody about hope, about waiting for the morning. Maria sang quietly at first, then louder, pouring everything she had into each word. The rain seemed to soften, as if listening. A few people slowed down. Someone stopped completely. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark jacket with a Marine Corps emblem stitched on the sleeve. His hair was cropped short, his posture straight even as he stood in the rain. He didn't reach for his wallet. He didn't pull out his phone. He just stood there, listening. This was Staff Sergeant Daniel Reyes, a Filipino-American Marine home on leave after his third overseas deployment. He had returned to the Philippines to visit family and to remember a country he loved but barely knew anymore. That night, he had been walking to clear his head, still carrying the weight of deserts, lost friends, and memories that refused to stay buried. He almost walked past Maria. Almost. But something in her voice stopped him. It wasn't perfection. It wasn't volume. It was pain. Honest, raw pain wrapped in a fragile, beautiful sound. Daniel felt his chest tighten in a way it hadn't since he left the battlefield. The noise of the city faded. All he could hear was this small girl singing in the rain like her life depended on it. And in a way, it did. Maria noticed him too. She kept her eyes down, but she felt his presence. Unlike others, he didn't look impatient or amused. He looked still, respectful. Her voice steadied. She sang the final note, letting it linger in the air. For a moment, there was silence. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel raised his hand, not to clap, not to give money, but to signal the traffic to stop. He stepped closer to Maria and gently asked her name. His voice was calm, careful, as if afraid to break something fragile. Maria whispered her name, barely audible. He asked why she was singing in the rain so late. Maria hesitated. She glanced across the street. Her uncle's eyes were sharp, warning. Fear surged through her again. She shook her head and said she just needed to help her family. Daniel nodded slowly, but his eyes had already seen more than her words revealed. He had seen fear before. He had seen it in villages torn by war, in the eyes of children who learned too early how cruel the world could be. He reached into his pocket and handed her a folded bill. Maria's eyes widened. It was more money than she usually earned in an entire night. But Daniel didn't walk away. Instead, he turned and looked directly at Rogelio across the street. The uncle froze. Daniel crossed the road, his boots splashing through puddles. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply stood in front of Rogelio and spoke quietly, firmly. People nearby began to notice. A small crowd formed, sensing tension. "I heard the girl sing," Daniel said. "She has a gift, and she's scared." Rogelio scoffed, saying she was fine, that this was just how things were. Daniel's jaw tightened. He took out his phone and dialed a number. He told Rogelio he could walk away now, or explain everything to the local authorities and social services. His voice never rose, but there was steel in it. The crowd watched in silence. Rogelio cursed under his breath, then turned and disappeared into the rain. Maria stood frozen, shaking. She didn't understand what was happening. She was afraid she was in trouble. Daniel walked back to her and crouched down so he was at eye level. "You did nothing wrong," he said softly. She started to cry then. Quietly at first, then with years of fear pouring out all at once. Daniel took off his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. Someone in the crowd offered an umbrella. Another person filmed the moment on their phone, though no one knew yet how far that video would travel. Daniel called a local charity he knew through a fellow Marine's family. Within an hour, a social worker arrived. Maria was taken somewhere warm and safe that night for the first time in years. The video of the Marine standing in the rain, listening to a poor girl sing, confronting her abuser without violence, went viral overnight. In the United States, people shared it with captions about humanity and hope. In the Philippines, viewers cried and prayed for Maria. Offers of help poured in. Music teachers offered free lessons. A local radio station invited her to sing. A scholarship fund was started in her name. But the biggest twist came weeks later. Daniel attended one of Maria's first public performances at a small community center. She was nervous, but this time, she wasn't alone. When she sang, her voice was stronger, freer. And in the front row, Daniel felt tears roll down his face, shocking even himself. A Marine trained to endure pain without flinching was crying openly, moved by a girl who had once been forced to sing in fear. After the performance, Maria walked up to him and thanked him. She said she didn't feel cursed anymore. She felt chosen. Years later, Maria would stand on bigger stages, telling her story, reminding the world that talent can be found in the darkest places, and sometimes all it takes is one person to stop and listen. Daniel would return to service, carrying her voice with him as a reminder of why protecting the vulnerable mattered. And Quezon City would remember the night when rain, music, and courage collided, and a poor girl's song changed everything.